In 1990, Detective Choi Hyung-gu is hunting down a serial killer known as Park, a man who has murdered 10 women since 1986 and has now abducted another victim whose whereabouts remain unknown. Their confrontation erupts inside a small restaurant, and Park proves just how dangerous he is. At one point, he even throws Hyung-gu with a move straight out of judo. Cornered and desperate, Park slashes the throat of the female restaurant owner to distract him. Hyung-gu quickly tells the other customers to press a towel against her wound, then immediately resumes the chase. Park, who always hides his face under a hat and mask, soon finds himself trapped. But just as Hyung-gu is about to handcuff him, Park suddenly leaps across to the next building, and Hyung-gu manages to shoot him in the left shoulder. Even so, when Hyung-gu closes in to arrest him, Park strikes back from a dark alley, stabbing him in the stomach and leaving a cut along the side of his mouth. Before disappearing, Park warns that next time he will slit Hyung-gu's mother's throat and makes it clear that Hyung-gu was only spared on purpose. This is where everything begins. This is confession of murder. 15 years pass after Park vanishes without a trace. By 2005, the statute of limitations on the case expires under Korean law. In other words, even if Park is found, he can no longer be prosecuted. Hyung-gu, still crushed by his failure to catch him, has become a broken man. He drowns himself in soju and spends his days drinking at his regular restaurant. Fortunately, the woman whose throat was slashed all those years ago is still alive, although her voice has never fully recovered. Not long after that, Hyung-gu receives a call from Hyun-sik, whose mother was one of Park's victims. Hyun-sik used to be a professional boxer, but ever since his mother's brutal death, his life and mental state have completely fallen apart. He thanks Hyung-gu for always caring about the victims' families, including him, and the tone feels disturbingly close to a farewell. Realizing something is wrong, Hyung-gu rushes to Hyun-sik's home, only to find that his fears were right. Unable to bear the pain any longer, Hyun-sik has taken his own life. 2 years later, Hyung-gu is living alone with his mother when a colleague suddenly calls and tells him to turn on the television. A shocking press conference is underway. A man named Lee Do-seok is introducing a book called Confession of Murder. In it, he claims that he is Park, the serial killer responsible for 10 murders over the past 17 years, as well as the abduction of one more woman. The book lays out every killing in detail and presents itself as his full confession, along with supposed remorse for everything he did. The media immediately swarms him with questions, but Do-seok answers with complete calm, showing no fear at all. He even apologizes to Hyung-gu for the permanent scar he left on his face. Then, as proof that he really is the killer, he points to the bullet still lodged in his left shoulder and even shows the scar. His book is set for nationwide release the next day, with online pre-orders opening that very night. The public rushes to buy it, and before long, many people are already finding it sold out. In the days that follow, the book sells at an incredible pace. Curiosity drives people to buy it, and it quickly breaks records as a bestseller. Most of the profits are donated by Do-seok to various causes, which only boosts his public image. He even visits the families of the victims, showing up despite heavy rain. One of them is Dr. Kim. All of this makes the public grow sympathetic toward him, especially many women who are drawn to his charm and appearance. At the police station, Hyung-gu finishes reading the book and becomes convinced that Do-seok is not the real killer. His superior feels the same way, saying that Do-seok simply does not look like a murderer. Then one day during lunch, Do-seok suddenly shows up, followed by reporters. He tries to shake hands, but Hyung-gu, who sees through him, refuses in the most direct way possible by knocking his hand away and even spitting on him. Despite that, Do-seok stays calm and leans in to whisper something that pushes Hyung-gu into a burst of anger, enough to make him throw his meal. Elsewhere, the victims' families gather for a meeting. Tae-seok, Do-hyung, Won-jang, and Won-jang's daughter Gang-suk, who is skilled in hunting, all come together under the leadership of Ji-soo, the mother of the 11th victim whose body has never been found. They are united by one goal: revenge. Their plan is simple: kidnap Do-seok, force him to reveal where Jisoo's daughter is buried, and then kill him. A few days later, Do-seok holds a fan signing event. Fans crowd around him, excited to see him up close, while others show pure hatred. Hyung-gu is among them, openly spitting on his book before being blocked by Do-seok's bodyguards. After learning that Do-seok regularly swims at a hotel, Won-jang disguises himself as a cleaner and releases a group of venomous snakes into the pool. Do-seok is bitten and quickly starts losing consciousness. His bodyguards rush to call an ambulance, not realizing that the responders who arrive are actually the victims' families in disguise. After giving him an antidote, they move him into the ambulance. Soon the real ambulance arrives and suspicion begins to rise. Tae-seok is forced to pull a knife to hold the bodyguards back, giving them just enough time to escape. The bodyguards immediately give chase. News of the kidnapping reaches Hyung-gu, who happens to cross paths with the ambulance on the road. Without hesitation, he joins the pursuit. At the same time, Do-seok begins to regain consciousness. With the back door of the ambulance left open, he manages to escape, jumping from one moving vehicle to another while being chased by Tae-seok. Do-hyung supports the chase from another car, and eventually they manage to force Do-seok back into the ambulance. Later, both Hyung-gu and Do-seok's bodyguards are treated at the hospital. Reporters quickly arrive, but Hyung-gu has no interest in answering their questions. Instead, he prepares his own plan. He asks his colleague to track down any recently purchased or rented ambulances. It leads them to one vehicle linked to Do-young. From there, an IT team traces Do-young's phone, and that very night, Hyung-gu finally locates him on the way to the place where Do-seok is being held. Once Do-seok regains consciousness, Jisoo immediately demands to know where her daughter Seo-yoon's body is buried. At the same time, Hyung-gu arrives at the location using night vision gear and quietly sneaks into the house. He discovers that Do-seok is being held in the basement. Without hesitation, he cuts the power, plunging the entire place into darkness. With no visibility, the victims' families are thrown into confusion. In that moment, Hyung-gu frees Do-seok and takes him away. Won-jang quickly releases his hunting dogs, while Gang-suk, skilled and relentless, chases after Hyung-gu into the forest with her crossbow. Hyung-gu manages to escape and takes Do-seok to a hotel, where he lets him go. Despite everything, Do-seok has become a public figure, almost like a celebrity, admired and protected by the media. Killing him outright would only create more chaos. After receiving treatment at the hospital, Do-seok tells the media that his kidnappers were just obsessive fans and insists he will not press charges since he is unharmed. Meanwhile, Jisoo storms into the police station, filled with anger and disappointment. She is convinced that Hyung-gu was the one who took Do-seok away. She slaps him and walks out without saying another word. A week later, a television program brings Hyung-gu and Do-seok together for a live debate. The show opens by announcing that Do-seok's book has sold over 3 million copies in just 1 month, generating an estimated $20 million in profit. During the debate, Hyung-gu states firmly that the 11th victim, Seo-yoon, is most likely dead, even if her body has not yet been found. He makes it clear that Do-seok is not the real killer and predicts that he will soon be exposed as a fraud. To test him, Hyung-gu asks about the exact words spoken during their encounter years ago. Do-seok cannot give a meaningful answer and claims he no longer remembers, brushing it off as unimportant. The show then opens the lines to callers. The first caller, a bookstore owner from Busan, praises Do-seok for boosting business and even compliments his appearance. Then a second caller joins, refusing to reveal his name and only giving the initial J. His questions are strange and specific. He asks about Hyung-gu's running speed and whether Do-seok knows judo, referencing details from the past confrontation. What is even more unsettling is that Jay answers those questions himself. He accurately describes Hyung-gu's abilities and even mentions personal habits, like his tendency to be late. Then, without hesitation, he reveals the truth. He claims that he is the real serial killer and tells Hyung-gu to stay off television before ending the call. The entire country is thrown into shock by this sudden confession. Reporters scramble, and the public reacts in disbelief. Meanwhile, Hyung-gu is stunned when the call is traced. It leads directly to his own home phone. Realizing the danger, he rushes back home with his partner, knowing that this case has just taken a far more personal turn. Elsewhere, Gang-suk tells her father Won-jang that she is stepping out for some fresh air. In reality, she is preparing to carry out her own plan to kill Do-seok in secret. She hides behind a moving billboard displaying Do-seok's face, positioned across from the TV station, with her crossbow ready. The moment Do-seok steps outside and is surrounded by reporters, Gang-suk takes her shot. The arrow pierces his right shoulder, and chaos immediately breaks out. Police rush in and chase her all the way to the rooftop, where she is eventually captured. At the same time, Hyung-gu arrives home and finds a message from Jae. The message reminds him of a threat to kill his mother if he steps out of line. Hyung-gu freezes as he reads it, but soon realizes that his mother is still safe. Then he spots Jae standing in a building across from his home. He quickly tells his partner to stay and protect his mother while he goes after him. By the time he gets there, Jae is already gone. However, Jae leaves something behind on purpose. A knife, the same one used years ago to stab Hyung-gu, along with a tape meant to prove his identity as the real killer. When Hyung-gu watches the tape, he is completely shaken. It contains footage of the 11th victim, Seo-yoon, being held captive. The truth hits him hard. Seo-yoon was not just another victim. She was his girlfriend, a relationship that only Jisoo knew about. In the recording, Seo-yoon realizes she will not survive and asks for one final thing, to hear Hyung-gu's voice. The killer calls the police station, and Hyung-gu answers, unaware of what is happening. Seo-yoon is silent so she cannot speak, and Hyung-gu is left watching helplessly, overwhelmed by the tragedy of it all. After replaying the footage again and again, Hyung-gu finally notices something important. A few days later, he holds a press conference and presents the knife left behind by Jae. The blood on it matches his own, confirming it is the same weapon used to stab him years ago. Even so, Hyung-gu still cannot fully determine who the real killer is, whether it is Do-seok or Jae. The bullet in Do-seok's shoulder matches the one Hyung-gu fired 17 years ago, and the details in the book are far too accurate to be written by anyone else. But there is one inconsistency. Do-seok seems to know nothing about the final case, the 11th victim, Seo-yoon. With the situation becoming more confusing, the TV station begins planning a special broadcast. They want to bring all three figures together, Hyung-gu, Do-seok, and Jae. The problem is obvious. No one knows how to find Jae. Meanwhile, Do-seok, still recovering in the hospital, asks his bodyguard to check his home. The safe inside has been opened. He claims the knife belongs to him and insists that Jae stole it during the kidnapping. He also dismisses Jae as an amateur pretending to be the real killer. This statement spreads quickly across the country, and Jae watches it all with a quiet smile. Not long after, Jae calls Hyung-gu again, mocking him for allowing Do-seok to deceive the entire nation. Then he brings up Seo-yoon, and that alone is enough to push Hyung-gu over the edge. Overcome with anger, he lashes out, barely able to contain himself as everything begins to spiral even further out of control. The next day, Do-seok holds another press conference. This time he addresses Jae's claim and insists that the knife belongs to him, saying it was stolen during the kidnapping. He then makes a surprising announcement. He plans to donate all profits from his book to the victims' families as a way to atone for the suffering caused in the past. On top of that, he refuses to press charges against Gang-suk for attacking him, which means she will be released. Once again, the public responds with sympathy, seeing him as someone who is not driven by money. At the same time, the TV station receives a call from Jae. He demands to be broadcast live from a rooftop across the building. The entire country tunes in as Jae appears on screen, openly mocking Do-seok for pretending to be humble while deceiving the public and stealing the identity of the real killer. He also criticizes Hyung-gu, calling him useless for allowing all of this to happen. Then he makes his intention clear. He wants to face both Hyung-gu and Do-seok in a nationally televised debate to prove that he is the true serial killer. Jae sends a set of tapes to the station, containing footage of a location that supposedly proves his claim. He promises to reveal the exact location 3 hours before the debate begins and requests bodyguards for his protection. The station agrees. Meanwhile, the victims' families continue preparing their own plan for revenge. Jisoo is determined to kill the real culprit the moment his identity is confirmed. Tae-seok disguises himself as part of the TV crew, while Do-young and Won-jong pose as staff around the building to set up a blockade. Jisoo takes a seat among the audience to watch everything unfold. Won-jang also prepares a deadly snake venom, carefully hidden inside a pen. On the day of the debate, the police chief warns everyone to make sure the suspect does not escape. As the show begins and Jae has not yet arrived, the host invites Dr. Kim, representing the victims' families, to speak. He is still unable to accept his daughter's death and wants the truth to come out as soon as possible. Not long after, Jae finally arrives through the back entrance, surrounded by bodyguards. For the first time, he reveals his face in public. Hyung-gu immediately tries to find out if Seo-yoon is still alive, but Jae offers nothing clear, only hinting that the truth will be revealed soon. Following Jae's instructions, a group of TV crew members begins digging at the location shown in his video. As they dig deeper, the truth becomes impossible to ignore. Human remains are discovered, and it becomes clear that this is where Seo-yoon was buried. Jae even provides details about what she was wearing at the time she was taken. Jisoo breaks down in tears, while Hyung-gu struggles to contain his anger as Jae continues to show no remorse. The broadcast cuts to a commercial break. During that pause, Hyung-gu steps away to the restroom, trying to regain control. Memories from 17 years ago flood back, reminding him of the time he saw himself as a failed detective, unable to stop the killings. In those memories, Seo-yoon stands by his side, comforting him and encouraging him to keep going. She had even planned to give him a new watch. The debate resumes, and the host explains that the remains must go through DNA testing to confirm they truly belong to Seo-yoon. Even though the evidence already seems clear, Jae shows visible frustration at the delay. The host then turns to Do-seok and asks if he still stands by his claim of being the killer. This time, everything changes. Do-seok admits that he is not the serial killer. He also reveals that he did not write the book Confession of Murder. The real author is none other than Hyung-gu. The truth finally begins to unfold. It turns out Hyung-gu was the one behind the book all along. He then reveals something even more shocking. Do-seok's real identity is Hyun-sik, the same man who took his own life earlier in the story. Hyun-sik's mother was actually Jae's first victim. As the studio receives background data about Hyun-sik, confusion spreads because his current appearance is completely different, and he was officially declared dead. At that moment, Dr. Kim steps forward and reveals that he was the one who performed Hyun-sik's plastic surgery. Hyun-sik's face had been severely damaged, and with Hyung-gu's suggestion, he underwent full reconstructive surgery. This means Hyun-sik's death was staged. Everything was part of Hyung-gu's plan over the past 2 years. His goal was to draw out the real killer, and it worked. The true serial killer is Jae. Hyung-gu understood Jae's personality perfectly. Jae craves attention and recognition above all else. That is why he left Hyung-gu alive years ago, so there would always be someone to remember and talk about him. By creating a new figure like Do-seok, someone who openly claimed to be the killer and gained massive public attention, Hyung-gu triggered Jae's ego. Jae could not accept someone else taking his spotlight. Once the truth is revealed, Jae simply smiles. He believes he is still untouchable because the statute of limitations has already expired. Hyung-gu then explains that his original goal was to find Seo-yoon's burial site, and after that, he intended to kill Jae himself. But while reviewing the footage Jae had sent, he noticed something critical. In the background of the video, there was a faint news broadcast. It mentioned the South Korean presidential election, specifically the night of December 19, 1992. That detail changes everything. The current date is December 18, 2007, and there are only minutes left before the statute of limitations expires. This means Seo-yoon was not killed immediately after being kidnapped in 1990. She was held captive for 2 years. The video proves that Jae was still committing crimes on December 19, 1992, which pushes the timeline forward and keeps the case legally active. Jae realizes the mistake the moment it is exposed. That faint audio in the recording becomes the evidence that destroys his entire defense. Overcome with rage, Hyung-gu points his gun at him. Even then, Jae shows no remorse. With a disturbing calm, he reveals the final cruelty. Seo-yoon was killed while she was pregnant with his child. He had abused her repeatedly before taking her life, without any guilt. At that moment, Hyung-gu's anger reaches its breaking point. Overcome with rage, Hyung-gu loses control and repeatedly strikes Jae with his gun until blood spills. His partner tries to hold him back, reminding him that Jae will soon face the death penalty. But for Hyung-gu, that is not enough. The anger and pain he has carried for years cannot be resolved so easily, and he pulls the trigger. Before he can fire, his partner stops him. In the chaos, Jae grabs Jisoo and uses her as a hostage to escape. But inside the elevator, Hyun-sik is already waiting. Jisoo tries to use the poison pen, but Jae knocks her unconscious, and a brutal fight breaks out between him and Hyun-sik. Jae gains the upper hand, stabbing Hyun-sik in the leg before escaping again. Tae-sok tries to stop him with a knife, but Jae manages to break through a window and get away. Outside, Wonjung charges in with a forklift, attempting to trap Jae along with his vehicle into a truck driven by Do-hyung. Somehow, Jae slips away once more, stealing a delivery motorcycle and speeding off. Hyung-gu immediately gives chase. Even after his car is hit by a truck, he refuses to stop and takes control of the truck to continue pursuing him. The chase grows more intense. The motorcycle is eventually knocked down, but Jae clings onto the truck and fights back, even kicking Hyung-gu off. Still, Hyung-gu manages to climb back up. Moments later, Hyun-sik returns and blocks the truck head-on. Hyung-gu shoots the tires, causing the vehicle to overturn. Now face to face, Hyung-gu and Jae engage in one final fight. There are only 3 minutes left before the statute of limitations expires. Just as Young-gu is about to end it, the police arrive and stop him, warning that killing Jay now would only send him to prison. Jay is finally restrained and placed in handcuffs. As he is about to be taken away, both Hyun-sik and Jisoo try to attack him, desperate for their own revenge. But Hyung-gu stops Jisoo, refusing to let her become a killer as well. Then, in a quiet but decisive moment, Hyung-gu takes the poison pen. Without hesitation, he uses it on Jay, ensuring that the man who caused so much suffering finally meets his end. The story then shifts to a memory from the night before Seo-yoon was taken. She had prepared a watch as a gift for Hyung-gu, something she never had the chance to give him, even though they had already met that night. Years later, in 2012, Hyung-gu is released after serving 5 years in prison for killing Jay. By this time, the law has changed, extending the statute of limitations from 15 to 25 years. As he walks free, he is greeted by reporters and the families of the victims. Jisoo thanks him for everything he has done, and finally hands him the watch that Seo-yoon had kept for him all along. A small piece of the past that brings a sense of closure to a long and painful journey. So the moral of the story is never trust a best-selling killer book. The real killer might just be watching TV waiting for attention.